So there are a lot of interviews going on right now, and I'll directly jump to the key ideas here. There are a lot of interviews going on right now, and I've been personally monitoring these interviews directly or indirectly. And there are some common observations made. Most of these observations are not new. They are already included in the course, in the Perfect Fit course and the main course. But it seems like these ideas are getting missed, or you don't realize how important they are till it happens to you, and then you have completely forgotten that something was mentioned already. So this session is largely to re-emphasize on these key ideas of how to practically own an interview and do very well with it. Okay. These ideas have a very, very high success rate, provided you prepare for it and you practice it. Okay. A lot of the students I've seen, they don't practice at all. They just show up for the interview, expecting that the companies are always ready to hire them. No, nobody is ready to hire you. You have to earn that right. But you can do few things to ensure that you get hired most of the time. Okay. So I'll deep dive right away. There's no presentation, there's nothing, but this is just straight conversation that I wanted to have with all of you. Number one, interview is a crude way of first finding out what's your life story, what's your career story. Then to find out if that fits what the person is looking for, the recruiter is looking for. Then whether it fits what the company is looking for. And then finally, to see if all the commercials and everything is aligned. I'll repeat this. Everybody wants to know your career story, life story. And why are you special? Why should I even care talking to you? Number two, whether you fit the recruiter's own criteria of what a PM should be and what a good professional should be, followed by what company is looking for and whether that fitment is there. And lastly, whether the commercials and all the other formalities are in place or not. Okay. Everybody else, good morning, who have just joined. I'll strongly suggest switch on your cameras so that we can see each other and have a good conversation. And in general, if I am taking a session, if I am on the call, please make it a point to show up in video. Okay. So the first question, how to prepare for the interview, number one. And hi Mithilesh. Number one, how to prepare for the interview. Number two, what mindset you should have. And number three, what are the most common questions and how to prepare for it, what to do about it. Preparing for the interview is not too different from making your resume. If you remember how you made your resume and the entire lecture plus sessions plus material that is added in the course, the key idea behind creating a resume is reflecting on what you have done in your career, the individual experiences that you've gone through, picking out 3 or 4 key stories and just talking about their achievements. That's the crux of building a good resume. The cleaner, neater, simpler way that you can present this, the better it is. Nobody needs fancy resumes. Nobody needs fancy anything. Similarly, when you're preparing for the interview, what you need to keep in mind is what are the 3 or the 4 stories from each of the experiences that you have gone through that you would like to talk about. So if you have been shortlisted using your resume, now the interview is to talk more about each of those experiences that you've written in your resume. It's a continuity of your application. So you started with a resume. Oh, I like this resume. I would like to know more about this guy whose resume this is. That's a natural next thing to do, which means you need to know your 3 or 4 top stories per experience. Okay, number one. Number two, for each of those stories, apart from knowing the story, I'll explain what a good story looks like or reads like. But apart from a good story, from each of the stories, you need to also tag what this story represents. Does it represent team, like a team player? Is it representing your skill set in a specific thing? For example, you wrote a pretty amazing PRD, or you did some analytical work, or you did user research, or you did something else. Tag each of these stories with something. Okay, tag that this is company A where I worked and for a couple of years, and these are the 4 stories of this. And each of the story, then you tag that this story represents my user's abilities or my something else, my technical abilities or something else. Okay. What is a good story? We all watch movies, right? Yes. Do you know that movies, irrespective of whether they are linear timeline, non-linear timeline, fancy, non-fancy, whatever, they all have the same structure? What's the oldest story? What is the most common story? Give me an example. High and more. What was the last movie that you saw? Quick. There's a lot to cover. You're not being graded about that. So, and nobody's going to judge you if you've watched a shitty movie. What was the last movie that you saw?
I think it's Kantara.
Everybody watched Kantara, but I don't know Kantara. I've heard of it, but I've what? How would you summarize the story?
I think it is narration of the customs of a particular uh, place in southern India and the religious traditions and so on.
That sounds like a documentary, but I'm sure there will be some
Uh,
characters.
yeah, it's narration of the lifestyle of people, and story takes walks you through different characters with some love story in that, with some fun
Now we're
and
talking.
yeah,
Okay,
and all
jump
that.
in.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you didn't watch it for the narrative. You watched it for the characters and watched it for the story. So what was the story? There was some character who fall in love. There were characters who fell in love. Then there were some customs which made them. There was some conflict because of the customs and rituals. I'm guessing here. I don't know. Is that right?
Well, not exactly, but there are different tracks. Uh,
Okay. I'm going to
yeah.
pick a simple movie. Titanic. Okay. There are characters. There are 2 characters who fall in love, but there are social divide. There's social divide, and eventually some tragedy happens, and because of that they get separated, and eventually the hero dies. That classic Romeo and Juliet kind of a trajectory, right? What really is happening in any story, all of these stories, and start analyzing any of these movies, essentially there is a character where you're establishing the context that this character is a rich person, this character is a poor person, or this character belongs to one religion, this character belongs to another religion. What is happening is, and they belong to London and rich, whatever, or they belong to Dharavi slums. Whatever the case is, you're establishing some context about the problem, right? This is what it is, right? Followed by, then you talk about in that context to explain this is the problem. The person wants to become a rap star, but he doesn't have money and he's struggling. Yeah. and the girl's parents are forcing her to get married, to like forcing him to find a job, or they'll marry off their daughter, right? That is a conflict. That's a problem. Then, okay, Sahil, we are, yeah,
Sorry,
that's
sorry.
a, okay. Yeah, that's noir, film noir cinematography right there. Okay, so there's a character, you establish the context, followed by the problem faced by these characters, followed by the conflict because of which this problem is very difficult to crack, and finally the solution. The solution is, yeah, the person becomes a rap star, something happens, blah blah blah, right? So this is the arc of all movies. It doesn't matter what the movie is, how fancy it is Interstellar, or it is Tenet, or it is Sholay, or it is what it is. Okay, it's the journey of a hero. That's the structure of every story. The reason I'm explaining you movies today is because when you're explaining your problem that you cracked in your when you're explaining your stories from your past experiences, they have to follow these arc. Even if it's just 4 lines that you're talking about each of the story, they should have these 4 lines. Step line 1, context. Line 2, the problem. Line 3, the conflict. Line 4, the solution. It's a story. If you just say, oh, we just build a software that automates data from Excel sheet to our software, okay, that's not impressive. Why it is not impressive? Because I don't know why it was a difficult thing to do, why it mattered. I have no idea, and so I'll not bother about it too much. But if you establish the context, you establish the context, you establish the problem, followed by the conflict, the key conflict. Problem is not conflict, by the way. Okay, problem is, hey, I was in a sales, I was a sales guy, I was a BD guy, sales guy, whatever, working for something, working for I don't know, let's just say agri-tech company. Okay, I was an accounts manager, and that is where I got exposed to product management, blah blah blah, and which is why I want to become a product manager. Great. But you're a sales guy, so what did you do, or what have you done? So in the agri-tech business, the problem is that in the agri-tech business, the first is to establish the context, right? The first thing, characters and the context. So you will say something like, in agri-tech business, the business development basically required me to talk to the mandi owners or the big farmers. Okay, needed to talk to big farmers. The problem is they are not very tech savvy. This is the problem. Okay, these characters are not very tech savvy, and they have a lot of dynamic data that they have to handle on a day-to-day basis, which they do it via normal pen and paper, or at best Excel sheets. Okay, so this was a major conflict, because this was a major problem, or this was an opportunity, because they have to be on the field most of the time with dirty hands and stuff, because of which it is hard to use pen and paper to, like, use the data, and the data, pen and paper data will not be dynamic, so you not get real-time data, because they got the weather data and everything in the morning, and by the time in the afternoon the data would have been outdated, for example. And the Excel sheet requires desktop, which again in the field goes bad very fast. What they do have though is, now it comes a solution. What they do have is mobile phone. So we built an app that recognizes vernacular languages, and the farmer can easily just talk in normal vernacular language to get important key data, like the price of the seeds, the price of the khad, the price of something else, or the weather data, and so on, but just by using voice. Okay, so I was responsible for selling this software, and that pursuit, I was also responsible for gathering this customer requirements and stuff. And in fact, this voice enabled function was my insistence, and I helped the product team build this. Now you have a complete story. Now I know how you think, what you're talking about, why this was important. If I had just jumped directly to oh, I helped build a voice-enabled function for the farmers. It just sounds like, oh, you built another, like, there are plenty of technical solutions around this. For this, it doesn't matter too much. But with the context, it starts mattering because now you're talking about your observation skills around key customer problems, right? So have these stories for each of your work experiences. Essentially, जो आपकी summary थी in the resume, that one-liner summary, you're elaborating that because you may be asked that quite often. That is done. Okay. This is your preparation. This is the key idea of the preparation. Once you have written this down, then you have to practice it. Okay. How do you practice it? For example, the question can be as direct as, can you tell me about a time when when you solved a user problem? Now, I remember that user problem in your mind's database, you can start indexing that, okay, user data, user research. There were 3 stories. Which one should I pick up right now? Okay, which one is most impressive in the current scenario? Knowing what I know now, because in the conversation, you may have learned a little bit more about how the interviewer is thinking, what the interviewer is asking, and so on. Right? So the question can be as direct as this. What have you done around user research? Or it could be indirect by saying, okay, how would you solve this problem? Okay. Or how have you solved similar problems like these? Now, the person is not exactly saying that, tell me about a situation where you have handled a data focused on analytics, product analytics problem, but it's implying that you tell me about a scenario where you have solved a product analytics problem. Does that make sense? Right? So if you have this clarity in your mind that these are my stories, life stories, and these are tagged to, these have these tags. Now you go from the story to the tags or tag to the story, but you have to have that in mind. Along with, how do you narrate your story? Okay. Clear on this? Any questions before I move to the next segment? Okay. Next segment is, now that you have all of this database prepared for yourself, that, okay, I am going ready with 9 or 10 stories of my life. Okay. How do you wave the conversation around these stories? Because when you start writing it down, you will learn that there are 4 or 5, maybe 3 stories, which are the most powerful ones. Right. Also, one more thing, just a side note on this. I have seen this quite often that students will, like, you have built a major project or you were involved in a major project. You build a software which took like 9 months or 6 months or whatever. Or if you're not directly involved, you were involved in some project which just took like 6 months, 9 months. If a topic in that direction is broached, students tend to give the entire Ram Kahani, the entire story that, oh, बहुत पुरानी बात है, ऐसा हुआ था, यहाँ से शुरू किया था, and then they non-stop talk for 10 minutes, explaining the entire project start to end over 6 months. Don't do that. Okay, don't do that. While the interviewer wants to know your story, but doesn't want to know the entire Ram Kahani. What he's looking for is that highlight, that spike, not the entire Ram Kahani, unless the person is explicitly asking for it. Which in my experience, rarely, very, very rarely happens. Like, it happens only when what you have done is so close and so similar to what the company is also doing, in which case the guy is very interested in how you solve that problem or how you handle that problem. So it's very, very rare. Nobody wants to know your 10-minute story. So at any point of time, take this as a thumb rule, as a rule that you should follow no matter what. in no interview scenario, you should be talking straight for more than 2 minutes. 2 minutes is absolute maximum. And if you don't believe me, go to your WhatsApp, make a audio note, and send it to somebody. Make sure that the audio note is 2 minutes, and just listen to it for yourself. And how long 2 minutes is. How much have you spoken in 2 minutes? Okay. So 2 minutes is an absolute must. 1 minute to 1.5 minutes is great. That's a perfect length for a good answer, for an elaborate answer. So you need to practice that down. And once you start practicing that story and everything, you will learn when you have spoken for 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, and when you are speaking too much. Okay. So coming back, now you have worked on a large project, which took like 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, whatever it took. How do you even explain that? Break that project down into its key problems that it solved. If something got built over 6 months or some large project happened, it was definitely not solving one problem. It was solving multiple micro problems. Correct? And very little chance that you solved each one of them by yourself. You can talk about that. Hey, we built ABC project, which was responsible for so and so. I was responsible for these 3 problems. Which one of these do you want me to talk about? Okay. So this is an important side note. Don't talk too much, which is nothing beyond 2 minutes, unless you have been explicitly asked in more detail and you are expected to talk for more and give entire details. Number one. Number two, break down your large projects into smaller chunks for a few reasons. Number one, you'll have more stories to talk about. Number two, very limited chance that you were directly responsible for the entire project's execution. And if you try to portray that or even imply it, people will understand that you're faking it. So break down. You can talk about that I was working on this large project along with 3 other people or 5 other people or whatever, 10 other people. You can talk about that. But then break it down into key components where you're directly responsible. You will have more authentic stories to talk about. Cool. And the last side note, I hope somebody's making notes here. The last side note on this in this regard is remember that it's a conversation. Interview is a conversation, right? So if you're unsure which story to talk about, or you believe all 3 are important, right? Let the interviewer know that, would you like to know more about this, or this? The more you do this, the more you're reflecting your confidence. Okay? That I am fully comfortable and confident about what I've done. You tell me what you want to know about me, and I'm happy to talk about it. You're reflecting that energy. You're not reflecting, oh shit, I don't know what you're going to ask me. Okay? Which brings me into the most important segment of today's chat, which is confidence. Okay? Interviews are scary. I know I'm talking about this right now, have confidence, etc. But if I am going to be interviewed tomorrow, I am also going to be nervous. It doesn't matter how many interviews I've given or taken. It doesn't matter. Interviews by default are scary. Why? Because it is unexpected. It's unpredictable how they can go. And usually we are so hard on ourselves, always. All of you who are aspiring product managers, you are being hard on yourself. You are doing something, right? But you want to do more. Correct? You want to do more. You're not happy with what you're doing. Or you believe you are made of more than what you're doing today, and which is why you're sitting here 8 o'clock in the morning listening to a guy in the other corner of the world, right? How to do better. You could have been sleeping in the blanket right now, right? So we are hard on ourselves. That's our DNA. Embrace that. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. Embrace that. At the same time, do realize that the other person who's interviewing is just having a conversation with you. And he's having a conversation about your life. He doesn't know you. It's up to you which aspects of your life you want to Open up. It's up to you. It's your life you're talking about, right? Yes, there might be certain aspects of your life which you stumble upon, or you are not very proud of, etc. Or the way it was asked, you were not able to present yourself very well, or so on. Things may not go your way. Okay, because the questions were asked in a very different way. I have gone through some shitty interviews as well, right? Where sometimes I screwed up, sometimes the interviewer screwed up, right? But in the end, the idea is one, it's your story that the person wants to know about. And in that pursuit, wants to know if there's a fitment or not. That's the interviewer's job. Of course, there's certain interviewers who are very biased, who are not neutral, etc., etc., and they might just say things that can just trigger you, right? But not having, forget about having, but channeling your inner confidence. I understand self-confidence is the pain. Self-confidence comes and goes. Morning may you feel like king of the world, and by evening you're like, why the fuck am I living? Right? That happens with everyone. So self-confidence comes and goes. So do realize one thing. If you're in that interview, you deserve it. They must have received a lot of resumes, and then you got shortlisted. So you are in there because you deserve that chat. Number one. Number two, the person wants to know your story. So do a good job at narrating your story, which is why you have to break down your story into its constituents, which is what I just mentioned in the first segment. How do you prepare for it? By having your story broken down into small segments. It's pretty much like giving trailers of the various things that you've done. Okay. Number two. Number three, when you're having the conversation, feel free to ask the interviewer, what aspect would you like to know more about? Reflects your confidence, reflects positivity, and reflects that you are in command. Okay. And the last, but the most important bit here is how to take control of the narrative in the interview. The power play in an interview setting is usually in your mind is that the interviewer is in charge and you are just following whatever the interviewer is going to ask you. That's the usual mindset that you have. All of us have, right? But if you switch that to what I just said some time back, which is it's a conversation. You sent out a document saying that, hey, I've done so and so things. Do you think this works for you? The person says, oh, yes, this sounds good. I would like to have a word with you. So now you are an equal person to this interviewer. The time is gone. Okay, the time has gone like 20 years back, but it has not yet settled in that the interviewers are on a higher power uh, uh, pedestal versus you are somewhere in the lower bracket. It's nothing like that. Okay. Once you switch that mindset into that I'm having a conversation with my equal peer who wants to know more about me, you will see that you are performing much better. So how do you do this? How do you control the narrative? There are certain body language things, etc., which I can talk about, but right now I'm much more concerned about the content that you're going to speak. So a key idea that I would like you to register in mind is the first question of an interview is almost always guaranteed to be, tell me about yourself. In one way, in one shape or another shape, this question is going to be asked. Tell me about yourself. Hey, I've gone through your resume. Can you just take me through it? Or this, you have done some pretty incredible work. I'm pretty excited to learn more about it. Can you tell me what has been a journey like? So the question may be asked in 1,000 different ways, but they all mean the same thing. Tell me about yourself. The rules of this question is, number one, you should not speak for more than 1.5 minutes, maximum 1.5 minutes. Number two, you should talk about things, stories, narrations, achievements, hikes, spikes, anything that is the highlight of your journey. And you need to pitch that. Okay. Because if you pitch those key highlights of your journey, you are essentially giving a lot of masala, a lot of things, points that the interviewer would like to know more about. That, oh, what is this guy talking about? I would like to know more about this thing, because people are inquisitive. They're not going to say, oh, no, no, I've come prepared. I have to ask these five other questions. No, they may, they may still have that. Sorry, give me a second, folks. Okay. Um, Sorry for that. Um, so essentially, um, tell me about yourself is your gateway to control the entire narrative of the conversation. You'll not be able to 100% control everything, of course not. But you should be able to control about 50% of it, which is a good deal. Provided you you bring out the key ideas or key pointers that you would want the interview to be asking you. Okay. Um, Anmol, we had a conversation yesterday, right, about this, right? Do you have the answer prepared now?
Yes, little bit of, yeah, but not.
Do you want to talk about the before and the after?
Yeah. So, firstly, on whatever the past experience you have done, you have to specifically showcase what kind of things you build from the features or a solution you have built, and provide a one-liner sentence about how exactly the problem you solve, the solution build, and the kind of a matrix you build. And in a 1.5 minute story, you have to provide one and two solutions, and then in the future what exactly you are looking for from that company, like I'm looking for that role. So metrics, qualitative statement, and quantitative, both of the things work together. And in that solution, like kind of an solution or features that you build, that must need to provoke the interviewer curiosity about what exactly the solution is. And based on that curiosity, you are already redirected to the stories that you have built. So
Can you talk about, Anmol, your previous, the before answer, like the first answer that you had given?
okay.
And then you can then you can talk about the second answer that we help prepare you.
Yeah. So firstly, I start with the tradition, like.
Let's just do a quick mock. So
Okay.
I'll ask you, tell me about yourself. You first give the earlier answer, the original answer that you
Yeah.
would give.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we will do the same exercise, but you give me the new
Okay.
answer that you prepared.
Okay.
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 So Anmol, thank you so much for joining. I'm very excited to learn more about you.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little, can you just run me through your journey?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for giving me opportunity. My name is Anmol, and currently I'm a product manager at a Future Planway. Future Planway helps the companies to find a talent across the categories like marketing, business, and technology. And apart from that, we also run an upskilling program specifically in tier 3 and tier 4 cities, where we build a partnership with the Google Digital Garage, Udemy Business Platform, and Skillsoft, and help those students to get the job in our portfolio of company. And my role at a Future Planway is to working directly with the hiring manager, companies, and the candidates, and elevating the entire hiring processes. And prior to my current work, I founded Accounting Birds. Accounting Birds is a SaaS tool which help small medium businesses to create a invoicing, managing inventory, and GST related compliances. So I have a overall 3+ years of founding experience and a product manager experience in a startup. And Accounting Birds, like prior to that, I also built various of business, but Accounting Birds was the starting point for entering into the digital product management. And I am looking for a role where I can directly work with the customers, impacting in their life, and while creating a business value. And I think that company is the right opportunity for me.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Anmol.
Thank you.
I'll give the feedback later. Okay. And I would like all of you to participate in that feedback, because it's very, very crucial for all of you to learn this specific skill of answering a good tell me about yourself.
Okay.
Anmol.
Yeah.
Now the new answer that we prepared. Okay.
Still it is a work in progress, but I can give it a try.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just make an attempt. This is what we discussed yesterday.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
have two styles. We have two styles.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Have you have you seen that Sunil Shetty movie?
Yeah. Which one?
Mere do baap, Gopi Kisan.
Not sure.
It's a 90s movie, so I don't know how many of you must.
No.
So there are two styles right now. Okay. Yes, Anmol. So thank you for joining in, Anmol. Let's run through what you have done.
Okay. Just a second. So hi, my name is Anmol. Currently, I'm a product manager at a Future Planway. My role at a Future Planway is working with the hiring manager, companies, and candidates to elevating the entire hiring experience. And for that, I build a internal tool which helps the companies to which help the companies to automatizing and streamlining the matching matching the right candidate with the right company. And with that tool uh, with that tool our team can increasing productivity around 60%. I'm still, this is a very like main points when I banai, but still I'm trying.
Go ahead,
and
go ahead.
and
Okay.
Last 4 months, like last 6 months, we also launched a personality assessment tool, which help companies to understand which kind of an role they are looking for, what exactly the kind of a skill set they are looking for, and based on that skill set, our personality assessment tool choosing the finding the right candidate based on that experience. And with that tool, companies are able to close their requirement within the on an average 36 hours. So that is the future. This is not right. Okay. And
Okay.
prior to that, sorry.
Let's pause because 15 minutes. Yeah. Anybody wants to talk about which of the answers were better? Was better?
Second one is better, but still required.
Anmol.
Sorry.
Hanji. Others.
Yes, second one looked much better in terms of what is the impact and how the journey of Anmol made an impact on the organization and the growth of it.
And they were okay. Anybody else?
I think the second one was better in terms of it was framed better. The words that were used in the first one were not structured, but in this one, the second one, it was more structured, and it went like a flow. But I know that he's working on the second answer, but overall the structure, I think it was a good flow.
Great. So a good answer to tell me about yourself, I'll tell you like what you have to look for. A good answer is memorable.
Okay.
The first one, the first answer was the entire Ram Kahani. देखो मैं लाइफ में आया हूँ, मैंने ये किया है, मेरी लाइफ ना बहुत ऐसी चल रही थी, बढ़िया चल रही थी, फिर ऐसा मैंने कुछ किया. Nobody cares about you. Please, let's just be, let's tell you, no, you're not a snowflake. Nobody cares about you. Especially the interviewer doesn't care about you unless you end up joining them. Okay. So what the interviewer is trying to get through is, are there any spikes or memorable things that this person has done? So give that person those memorable quotes, phrases, things that you have done. Okay. If you implant those memories, etc., what will happen is two things. One, the person during the interview will have more things to ask you. That, oh, you spoke about personality assessment test. How exactly did you build it? Now I remember personality assessment test. Right? I have a term that I can ask. In the first answer, I didn't have a specific term. It was a very broad
Robotics.
thingy.
Like that.
Very broad thingy that, oh, I help students get placed or something and then upskill, etc. Okay, great. But what exactly have we done? Now I have two things to talk about, and I remember it right now. Personality assessment test, number one, and number two was the
Internal
matching, the internal tool for matching. I'm curious about both of them. Correct? So now I have two memorable spikes from his past experience. Right? So give these memorable phrases, words, ideas to your recruiter, to your interviewer, so that they can ask about it. And if you have done a good job explaining that later, then they will remember you with this. Oh, I interviewed Anmol, who has built this personality assessment test, which is fairly complicated. And from looks of it, it seems like he has a good grasp of it, which basically means he has the right intelligence plus functional understanding of how software are built. Right? So interviewer will remember it later. Okay. So what you've done is two things. You have become memorable for the interviewer, and number two, you have also given a series of questions that the interviewer would want to know more about. After listening to that answer, I cannot just directly jump to, okay, great, Anmol, thank you so much. Okay, can you solve this case for me? I'm not going to jump through that because I'm also trying to have a normal conversation with you. So I cannot jump from here to a completely unrelated thing. I'm going to definitely ask you, what was the impact of what you built? That might be next question. Or how did you build personality assessment test? What was your role in it? What did you contribute to it? I'm going to ask you those questions and then I'm going to go through that segue. Make sense? Yeah. So please tell me about yourself is the greatest tool and weapon that you have to crack your product interview. Make the most of it. Okay, because that's the only thing that is predictable. You have complete control over it, and you can take the interviewer through your journey in the most commanding way without letting the person even come to know. Okay. The second greatest trick and weapon that I can tell you is be very friendly and nice to the interviewer. Because the interviewer is actually trying to be very friendly with you, but in reality, they're actually trying to get the most information from you. They're trying to let you get comfortable so that they can find your weaknesses. You know, the greatest stories in the world, they all include this one closest friend, relative, or somebody who actually made your life living hell. Right? So the only way to know you is by letting that, break the ice, let the walls down, that, hey, we are just having a conversation. I was just like you 5 years back. It's great to talk to you. I'm your friend. मेरे से बड़ा तुम्हारा दोस्त नहीं होगा. And the same guy half an hour later will be saying, please, शक्ल मत दिखाना इसकी मेरे को. So the interview, this is a technique. This is a technique that is followed by most of the recruiters. They want to have a good conversation. It's not like a deceit or anything. They want to have a good conversation with you. And at the same time, they really want to know the real you. Okay, that's their job. That's their task. That's exactly what they are supposed to do. Yes. So So in that regard, the best way to know you is by letting those guards down, helping you reduce your, get your guards down. Correct? And for that, it becomes important for them to be friendly, have a good conversation, and then give good feedback. What I've seen too often is students feel that, oh yeah, this guy is my friend and he's just having a good conversation. So I can just reveal whatever I want to reveal. Please don't do that. You be friendly as well, play the same game, you're just having conversation, but do not let your guards down. No matter what. Even if that is your distant cousin, doesn't matter. Or real brother, doesn't really matter. Don't let your guards down. Okay? That person is sitting across the table and has a job to protect. If you end up being a bad hire, it will come back to you. Come back to him. Yeah. So he is going to save his job and he's not going to risk it for somebody that he has just met. Yes. So do not let your guards down, no matter what. It's an interview. It's a half an hour, 45 minutes conversation. We are disclosing things that you believe will matter for the company, and that's it. Small side note, and I'm surprised that I have to even mention it, but I'm just going to mention it, which is show tremendous amount of integrity, which means you're not going to talk bad about your past experiences. You're not going to talk bad about any of your bosses, any of your colleagues, any of your customers, any of your clients, nothing. It's a strict no, because the immediate impression that I get as an interviewer, if I hear that, is number one, if you can talk about your past experiences like this, you're going to talk about me as well. All right. Everything else, everything else that situation was so bad because of which you were not able to perform, blah, blah, blah. They're all excuses. They're all, however real they are, just don't do it. Just strict no, it's a strict negative. Okay. I'll not take the name, but I got a feedback from one of the founders just a few days back, wherein the founder was not convinced. Everything went well, really well. Okay, everything was great. The only hitch the founder has is that the student was happily sharing the mocks and the work done for a company similar to the interviewer's company. Okay. So the student had done some work for a company, another company. It was confidential, of course. And when asked by the interviewer, the student was happily sharing those confidential information of that other client, company, customer, whatever it was, with this interviewer. This may reflect, you may think that this is good, but it isn't. Because then the interviewer is worried that, like, for an opportunity which you have not even got yet, you are willing to share confidential information. Right? So absolutely uncool. Don't do that. Okay. So please be very mindful of showing good, upstanding integrity in all such matters. Number one. Number two, don't let your guards down. The interviewer is not your friend, no matter how he reflects it. Some interviews also happen, by the way. Some interviews happen while walking. Nowadays, of course, those interviews have become very rare, but some interviews happen while over lunch, over dinner, while walking. Right? No matter the context, no matter the scenario, no matter how you got referred, no matter what it is, don't let your guards down. Okay, and I cannot emphasize and re-emphasize this much. Okay. During the interviews, do not say bad about any of the work, any of the people that you work with. Neither you're going to share any confidential information. When asked so, sorry, I cannot share that because it is confidential, or I'm under contract, or I'm under whatever, that I cannot share that information. I can give you a broad idea of what it was, but I cannot share that information. Okay. Show your integrity and honesty. Okay. To end today's call, rest everything. If you prepared your stories well, you're telling me about yourself well, you have won half of the interview for sure. Right? Because it's your story. And you have built that story with that narrative structure that I told you. Using that narrative structure, you have tagged it, you have indexed it in your brain. This story talks about this skill, or this nature, or this personality of mine, and so on. Tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with your team members. How did you handle it? Go back to your database, pick out a story, and talk about it. Okay, another thing, one quick something that just came to my mind. If you do not have a story, you never had a disagreement because you are completely non-confrontational. You are like, yes, sir, or yes, kar dete hain aise, koi dikkat nahi, right? Don't say that. Okay, so it's like, it's like inorganic chemistry. You are taught something, and in the next lecture, you're taught that there are 1,000 anomalies and exceptions to that what was taught yesterday. Right? Okay, I don't know how many of you got the joke, but yeah, inorganic chemistry is all about exceptions rather than rules. So I don't know what is a rule and what is an exception. But anyway, what I just mentioned about being honest and upstanding, there might be scenarios or situations which you have not yet come across where you have never disagreed with anybody. Even if that is the case, far-fetched, if you say that, no, I have never disagreed, I will not believe you. Right? I'll not believe you. It will be very hard for me to believe that you've never disagreed with anyone. And let's say, so in my brain, what will happen is this person is lying. That is not possible. Or number two, you're so agreeable, which means you have no opinion of your own, that you actually never got into any disagreements. Both of these things are negative for me. Not having an opinion, strict no. And lying to me, for sure, strict no. Right? Which means deep dive into your past experience, your history, your work that you've done, and ensure that the common things, right? Disagreements, very challenging problem, or you went against everybody else when you succeeded, situations where you failed, your weakness, your strength, the standard boring questions that we typically ignore, that ye to theek hai. Please, for God's sake, if they are common, if they've been asked for the last 50 years, is because they're going to be asked for the next 50 years also. Okay. So, some people do ask me, or typically say that, what is the point of asking such questions? If I'm going to say, what is the weakness, and you're going to give me some roundabout answer, what is the point of asking those questions? The point of asking those questions is the way you answer, and out of the 1,000 things that you could have said, knowing fully well how to answer those questions reflects very well about how you think and what your personality is. If I ask this question right now, what is your weakness? I guarantee that all of you will have a different answer, and that will reflect very well about what matters for you. Out of the 20 options, 50 options, 100 options of that answer, you picked a certain specific answer. And that reflects very well on how you're thinking. Make sense? Yeah. So please prepare all of those questions, the usual questions. Okay. Those usual questions can be asked in any way, any possible way. Just like tell me about yourself will not be asked in tell me about yourself mostly. It will be asked like when I ask Anmol, I ask him in two different ways. Run with your journey, take me through your resume, something else. Similarly, your weakness, your strengths, your disagreements, your aspirations, what's that one thing that you are most scared of? These usual questions. And the list of these questions are in the course, by the way. All of these usual questions, please prepare for them. Okay. If you do not have a prominent story, please make a prominent story. There's a good chance you will not remember any story or any instance or any conflict in your life that was so strong, for example. Yeah, very, very good chance for that. Please spend some time with your colleague, peer, somebody who can help you remember. Okay. And the last bit, which like honestly nobody should have to get to, is to invent a story. Okay. Now, when you're inventing a story, you're being dishonest. That's a fact. But when it comes to questions like these, which is disagreement, weakness, and so on, it's much more about your personality trait that I'm trying to find out rather than whether you actually did these things or not. Versus, did you work on Google Analytics and have you done product analytics to find out something? That's a much more factual question. And in those scenarios, I'll recommend to be more honest than trying to portray your personality. You can say something like, no, I've not worked on this specific software, but I do understand product analytics and I've used something else to do this, which is a good answer. You're being honest, you're being clear, right? But the other questions, the personality questions, essentially what I am as an interviewer trying to find out is a personality. What matters to you, what doesn't matter to you, and so on and so forth. So you can put that personality out even if those things have really not happened with you. Okay. So I hope you are able to differentiate being honest versus being dishonest. Yes. The chances of you not going through any of such things in your life is very, very rare. It's impossible to think that you do not know what your weaknesses are. It's impossible to think that you never had disagreements. It's impossible to think that you, for example, a question that I really, really like asking is, tell me about your most challenging project. Okay, that's one of my favorite questions. Typically, people say, okay, I built personality assessment test, for example. Why was this challenging? The usual answer then comes out to be, it was technically very this challenging, blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's fine, but why was it challenging for you? What was in that problem that made it challenging for you? Right? And then the person opens up like an onion. Now you're essentially peering down on your core weaknesses. You just spoke about something being very challenging for you. Why the hell it was challenging? Usual defensive answers in those cases. I'm digressing right now, but I think it's an important question. Usual ways of deflecting, usual ways of deflecting this answer is, this is challenging because I had never done this before. Right? I'll immediately say, I'm sure you would have done other 100 things as well, which you've never done before. This interview is the first time ever with me. What made it that challenging? Which is when the person starts going deeper. And usually what I've seen is students or candidates that I'm interviewing, they get a little hassled. They get a little hassled and they start just spilling the beans. Oh, I had never worked on APIs before. Oh, I had never worked with a team like this size. I had never worked with the product this size. I had never blah, blah, blah. Okay. And that just immediately reveals everything that is wrong with the candidate or the things that this candidate is worried about or scared about. So my intent of asking the question, a challenging project, is not to know about the challenging project. I want to know more about you. So it's a trick question. Yeah. Now, of course, some interviewers may want to just know the challenging project aspect as well, but it will help you. Now, so you saw how I weaved the weakness question, weakness and strength question into a completely unrelated question. Right? Because if I directly ask you, tell me about a weakness, oh, I have an answer prepared. Let me just vomit it out. Correct? But if I ask you in this fashion, the chances of you suspecting that this is the answer to give is very low. Make sense? So घूम फिर के ना इतने questions होते हैं. Essentially, इतने questions होते हैं. If you prepare them well and keep your brain active, that for this question, is there any of the answer that I have prepared? Can I give any of those answers? Think about that. What exactly is the person trying to ask you? Right? And then most likely you will have one of these standard answers which you can just give and you will succeed that interview. Cool. Okay. As I know I've exceeded the time by 6 minutes. We started 5 minutes late, so I'll just take 2 more minutes to conclude this. We went through the entire journey, okay, that how preparation is important. All of this interview winning, etc., is relatively not that hard. Yes, it makes you nervous, it makes you feel weak, it makes you that, oh, I'm not prepared, I can prepare a little bit more, you will never be prepared. Let me be very honest. I've not met a single person who's like, "Arey, aaj to main tayar hu. Pucho jo puchna." I've never met a single person. So you'll never be prepared. Of course, there are various degrees of unpreparedness, right? But if you're invested like a week, 2 weeks in preparing those answers, if you have these core things ready, tell me about yourself, strengths, weaknesses, challenges, the work that you've done, you have the stories prepared, you have indexed them, etc., then it just simply comes down to practice. Okay, and then you have to practice. So do a ton of mocks. There are at least 10 people here. You can do permutation combination, and there's so many mocks that you can do amongst yourself itself. These 10 people right now. Right.
In that case, sorry for interrupting you. Conducting mocks between people like us land us into a place where we are not able to judge anyone else whether that person is doing efficiently well in particular question or not.
Okay.
A mentor or a coach being very experienced and taking a lot of, so me being a product guy had never taken an interview of another product person, so I may not be able to qualify someone based on his answers. So that's the problem I'm facing.
That's a good question. But the intent of you're thinking that you are trying to be a interviewer. You're not trying to be an interviewer. You're helping the other person prepare for the answers. अनमोल को आंसर देते देते समझ में आ गया कि आंसर सही नहीं दे रहा है. Okay, let me give you a different analogy. Okay, growing up, my mom would prepare me for my tests. Class 6, class 8, class 10th. Okay. Now, class 3 तक उनको समझ में आता था कि क्या पढ़ाई हो रही है. उसके आगे धीरे धीरे नहीं समझ में आता कि क्या है, what is that question about? क्या ये ज्योमेट्री है, क्या उनको नहीं पता था. She is not very well educated, right? But she would be the one who will sit up and she will ask me questions. And answer देते देते मुझे समझ में आ जाता था कि मैं आंसर सही दे रहा हूँ कि नहीं दे रहा हूँ. So it is less about you acting as an interviewer and giving a real interview environment. As a peer, the chances of you giving that is very low. Okay. It's more about helping somebody else practice those questions and giving the answers. वो देते देते student को समझ में आ जाएगा, and you will also understand कि यार तुमने आंसर मजा नहीं आया. I can't pinpoint कि क्या गलत हुआ, लेकिन मजा नहीं आया. And then you can say कि हाँ यार ये question ना समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. Now I can write that down that I am not very confident about this particular question. Okay, and I have a mentor that I can reach out to.
Got it.
Right. This is something that we did with YC also. we as founders, we would talk to each other and we would interview each other. Ki, acha, investor ki kar lete hain, ye kar lete hain, wo kar lete hain. We would do all of these practice sessions. Now that person knows nothing about my business, my geography, my country, my problem set, doesn't know anything about it. Like, he's intellectually smart, but doesn't mean that he knows about my business. Same, I do not know his business. I do not know his problems. I do not know why he's solving, and so on and so forth. Right? But when I'm giving the answer, I can already feel that this is not convincing enough, or this is not good enough. Correct? And which allows me, okay, these answers I'm very confident about, these answers I'm not confident about, then I can go and talk to one of my mentors that, hey, can you, like, this is the answer that I'm giving for this question. Do you think this is good? How can I improve it? And that becomes a great conversation with the mentor. Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
So coming back to the point, please prepare the core crux of your interview preparation is preparing your stories, indexing them, tagging them with the various things, personality skills, technical skills, design skills, product skills, tag them against all of them so that you can retrieve them when the interviewer asks so. Of course, the interviewer is not going to directly ask you that, ye ek story batao, ek kahani batao jahan pe na aisa hota hai. He's not going to say that, right? But he's going to weave that question in a certain way, just like I did some time back. Right? The challenging wala question. मुझे कुछ product से चिंता ही नहीं थी. I wanted to know more about you. I want to know your weaknesses. Right? So if you're prepared for that, tell me about yourself. Half the battle is won. Rest half is about cases and practices and stuff. I'll depart today by simply saying, seeing the cases that I've seen in the last 2-3 weeks, a ton of interviews are going on right now. I think I just got a message that 2 or 3 more students are being shortlisted, and interviews are lined up today, which is great. And one interview just happened right now. Seeing all the cases that are being asked in the interviews and so on, actually, that was interesting. Yeah, the message that I just got right now is about this one student who got a design problem. It was a product design challenge, which he solved as a case he submitted, but the case was not good. What he submitted was not good. He got rejected. And then I got on a call with him to understand what did you do and why did you do it, and realized that he went on a completely different tangent, etc. And then I had recalled him that the case number 10 of the course is exactly this. You have to just follow that structure. If you follow that structure, there's no way that you cannot be selected. He did that and he got selected. He just got shortlisted. I messaged the founder that give him another chance. He was just a little nervous, and so he submitted. He got shortlisted. Hopefully, he'll be able to crack the interview. Right. So that's another thing, that if you look at the 15 cases, we just go back and go through the 15 cases that you have solved. Go through the 40 cases, I think 40 or 42 cases that are additional practice cases. इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं आएगा. ठीक है, इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं आएगा केसेस में या क्वेश्चन में या चैलेंज में. यही है, इसके बियॉन्ड कुछ है नहीं. There might be something very specific that might be asked and so on and so forth. If that happens, please share with me. I would love to learn what's happening right now in the industry. But I must have come across at least 40 or 50 such cases, interview cases in the last 3-4 weeks itself. All of them map to one or the other cases that you have already worked on. Okay. So go back to those cases. Okay. You don't have to practice them, but go back to those cases. And जैसे physics में करते थे ना, अगर ऐसा problem आएगा तो पहले ये करना है, फिर ये करना है, फिर ये करना है. Right? Physics में तो था, maths में तो था कि अगर इस टाइप की problem आएगी, then this is how you have to solve it. Sort of a playbook of sorts. Remember those playbooks. Okay. For example, a common question is, which may not be directly asked, but indirectly asked. The common question is, okay, so we are building a personality assessment test. Okay, how would you build it? It's a design problem, but उसमें सबसे पहले शुरू होगा कि value क्या है, which takes you to the first case. What is the product? Because that is when you will come to know what is the value. Correct? Then you jump to the case number 10, where you start talking about the product design challenges, the questions, etc. And if the person asks technical questions, that's when the PW wala case hai, Starbucks wala, that will come into picture. And then there are a few cases which I've already included, plus the technology for PM course jo hai, that will help you cover the rest of the ground. जो material है 15 cases and 40 cases, उसके beyond को practice करने की जरूरत नहीं है, that is more than enough. Acha, one more thing, the last thing, you guys must be starting the day as well. Last thing, there's a course that we just launched, I think a week back, 10 days back. It's called Product Manager Analytical Interview Preparation. It's a mouthful, which is a case which I actually built because there are some of you who were interviewing for Clipboard Health, and they had a very interesting case around Lyft. Lyft is a taxi service like Uber. So I remember like बहुत पहले 6-8 साल पहले I had given an interview for Uber and I got selected, and उसमें एक analytical interview था. So using that information, and I had some notes from that time. So using that, I have prepared this course, which will help you prepare for not just Uber, although I've used Uber as an example in that particular course, but it'll prepare you for any marketplace related interviews as well.